Thanks everyone for downloading this episode of the Nerdball Podcast. I'm your host Lorenzo Melcher, as always, coming into this new video space that I'm able to make these podcasts. And I thought it was funny when I was recording the first intro. I was like, I hope these cameras and stuff are working right. And if you remember from 2 episodes ago, if you watch on YouTube, they were not in fact working correctly for the intro. So that hopefully has been remedied, and hopefully this one is on actually. So since I do all this by myself, I just had to run around and turn on all the cameras and sit down and hope everything runs smoothly. So hopefully everything worked for this one again. And as always, I appreciate all of you for liking, sharing, subscribing, downloading the podcast, really helping it grow. We officially reached 150 subscribers on YouTube, which is awesome. And the 2 episodes ago was the highest viewed YouTube video I've had for the podcast. So that was awesome. So I appreciate all of you for watching that, sharing it. That was a huge one. And that goes to show, if you're sharing the podcast, people will go and check it out, even if it's for a little bit. So all of it helps. If you are new to the podcast, search us on all social medias, the Nerdball Podcast. Go to YouTube, hit that bell, subscribe to the podcast so you can never miss an episode. Free to you, helps the podcast out immensely. TikTok, I've been making TikToks. Again, search the Nerdball Podcast. If you want to be on or know a guest that would like to be on or have any tidbits or info that you would like to share, you can email us at thenerdballpodcast@gmail.com. Other than that, that's it. It was another great episode. I had a great time meeting kind of a stranger. I always do that thing where it's nice to meet you, and then this person, this or that person will say, well, we actually met at this time. Like, well, I'm terrible at remembering people's names and faces. So I embarrassed myself at the beginning, but then we brought it home. It was a great hour-long episode. Learned a lot about them. I hope you really enjoy the episode. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Austin Lada, and this is the Nerdball Podcast.
This is the Nerdball Podcast with Lorenzo Melcher.
All right, Austin, thanks for coming out and coming on my podcast. We've been Facebook friends because you know my brother-in-law Jake, but now we're in person, and as much if you've ever listened or people listening, they know that I'm pretty late trying to find guests. So this is par for the course of trying to find a guest the night before. So
you got to be digging deep for me to be here.
Well, I put it on. I have and this is another frustrating thing, which is whatever. I'm not going to make people like my page, but I have I don't know, over 1,000, 1,200 Facebook friends. And then on my Facebook page, there's 400 people that like the podcast.
Sure.
And 150 that subscribe to it on YouTube, which I'm grateful for. But it is one of those things hey, just I remind people every time, just hit subscribe or go like this page. I don't post a lot. You're not going to be bombarded with stuff or whatever. But
as long as you love doing it, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, Austin, the first thing I always ask people is what is something you nerd out about? Something you're really into. It could be something you started a long time ago. It could be something you just picked up, some sort of hobby. The only thing is that it can't be about work. It has to be something to kind of get you away from that.
Yeah. Well, work's not a huge part of my life. It pays my bills, but
yeah.
I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I know that a lot of guys talk about sports and other things. I'm kind of nerding out about my wife lately.
Yeah. All right.
She's been through a lot of stuff lately. Found out her dad had stage 4 cancer.
Oh, wow.
And then back in April, her daughter, who is allergic to many things, had an allergic reaction when she woke up. And it was a tough day. Had to call the ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
They had to intubate her on the way to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And so it's been a long journey dealing with that. Aside from that, she works a swing shift job, so nights, days, back and forth. And so she does so much for her family. Mm-hmm. She does so much for me. And I'm kind of geeked out about it or nerded out about it, whatever you want to say.
Hey, it's either one.
No, man, she's just super cool. I've been divorced once. I've been through the throes of the relationship issues. Mm-hmm. And just to have somebody that lets me be who I am.
Sure.
I wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for her. Mm-hmm. So props to her. But that's something I nerd out about.
So I have multiple questions. You can choose to answer them
Sure.
if you want to. First question, her father, what kind of cancer did he have?
So he went to the emergency room. He was having issues with his bladder.
Okay.
They did some testing. They found out he has stage 4 bladder cancer, and it's also spread to lymph nodes. And he's choosing not to go through with chemotherapy. He'll be 70 this year.
Okay.
He's trying to do the holistic way, and I like it because I feel the quality of life for him is going to depend on the route of treatment that he takes.
Yeah.
So, great dude, hard worker. He couldn't wait to get out of the hospital and get back to work.
Sure.
He's retired and yet still working.
Yeah. What does your wife think about that approach too? Because I know with some family members, it's like, hey, we're gonna do it like this, or I'm X old and I'm not gonna fight it at all. Like, how does she feel about it?
She feels great about it. She's ever since I met her, she's introduced me to a completely different lifestyle.
Okay.
In terms of taking care of oneself, natural remedies, exercise, grounding, just all the things that you can do that, even if it means nothing at all, it makes you feel better. It kind of makes you focus on life, because there's so much drama and everything else that's going on in everybody's life every day. But to be able to go watch the sunrise, come up over the lake, grounding, whatever. It's a different way of life, and I've grown to embrace it.
Yeah.
It's just.
How was it at first?
What's that?
How was it at first when like all this, like you're like, I would imagine you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Well, as I grew up, both my parents worked in a hospital, so
Okay.
they were, take the medicine, just the natural ways that you would expect, and so it was a complete culture shock for me when I met her. But it was something that I was willing to explore, and if nothing else, the benefits from it, just for the soul, have been great.
That's good because it is. I mean, like you said, your parents were both in working in hospitals and medical field. It is almost a fundamental shift.
Yeah, 180.
Yeah, right. So, but then you talked about your wife at the beginning, and if you love this person, whoever is out there, and you love the person you're with, you are gonna try things that you don't normally try, or you're gonna maybe change lifestyles. Not full send right away, but eventually, little by little, these things start affecting how you do things. Just because you live with this person and they do it,
Yep.
and you get intrigued, like, wait, so you've been doing this for a couple months now. Can you explain this to me? Because I've noticed, that you do it a lot, or that you like it, or whatever, and it's a natural thing.
And I appreciate it too, because it has opened my eyes to ways of life that I didn't understand before, and it makes sense to me because our ancestors from way back when, they lived off the land, literally. Everything they did every day, when they wake up in the morning, that's what they get. Their feet on the ground, they get sunshine in their face, eating habits, like all of it. It's a lifestyle that I love.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned her daughter, and you have other kids? You have other?
Yeah,
stepkids?
I have a daughter, and she has 3 daughters.
Okay.
So I got 4 girls.
All right, man. Can I? These gnats are crazy. There's like 1 or 2, but they're
That's all right.
just welcome.
I'm going to eat it if it comes out.
All right, so you have you have stepchildren. Did you have kids with your first wife?
I did.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And how many do you have?
Just one.
Okay.
She's 16. She'll be a junior.
Okay, all right.
And then the others are 24, 18, and 17.
How is it? I mean, people call it a blended family, but how has that been for you guys?
Interesting.
Yeah.
My first wife was a blended family too. She had 2 older sons when I met her.
Okay.
The blended family thing, I don't really think much of it. It's not something that I guess when you grow up, you don't expect to be part of a blended family. And when we were growing up, divorce wasn't as big as it is now. So I think blended families are kind of it's a normal way of life anymore.
Yeah.
And it's fine. I love all 3 of her daughters. Each one of them are different in their own way. And you learn to parent differently for each one of them.
It's got to be different, but as I have 2 kids, it's different, and then you also in your mind you're battling fairness.
Sure.
Because sometimes different will lead to unfairness.
Sure. And primarily because they're girls, and I swear by girls over boys any day of the week. Boys are just, they're a pain in the butt. But girls, and it may be because they're sympathetic creatures. Women are naturally. And it's been a great experience. I don't want to say catering to, but parenting to each one of their lifestyles.
Yeah.
Her oldest was already later teen years when I met Brooke, my wife, and so it wasn't so much her, but as much as her younger 2 daughters. But just I've given them space to be who they want to be, and not try to parent too hard because they still have a father that they see.
Sure.
And I don't want to. There's no rift to be there, but just let them be. And I think that's true about all kids.
Sure.
So
Especially when it's just natural as every year they get older, it feels like there's just pull apart because it's just natural. That's what happens. And I feel like there was hard work for you at the beginning because you're like, well, these are my kids. I am coming into their life, and you have to work very hard to figure it out. And sometimes your hard work is just not doing anything at all.
well, and excuse me. When I first met them, it's kind of like, okay, you're going through a divorce, trying to manage that with your own kid, but also trying to start a relationship with somebody else's kids.
Yeah.
It's an interesting transition to say the least.
Yeah.
But I've loved it.
Good. Yeah, because it is. I mean, my parents divorced when I was like 20, 21. Then they were apart for 8 years, and then they remarried each other, and they're married again.
Don't hear that.
No, and it was a thing, and I've talked about it before. It was a thing where my mom, she's a recovering alcoholic, but at the time when they were first married, all my dad knew was how to take care of her. And then when she decided to get sober, it was difficult for my dad because he's like, I don't know how to handle this, and they kind of changed. And then when they divorced the first time, they had to figure out themselves first, and they're like, all right, these are the new us. And then they came back together. They never we still had holidays together. They always told each other they loved each other. Everything seemed like they were married still. Yeah. But then they came back and it was like 2 different people. So, having, I mean, I went through it, but I was already old and older, and I was out of the house, and it wasn't as affecting me as much.
Sure.
But,
and I understand that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it's like as a kid going through something like that. It's got to be difficult. I'm fortunate my parents are still together. Great parents.
Yeah.
But obviously in my 2 marriages, I've gone through the blended family situation, and it builds some character for sure.
Oh, I bet. I mean, for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You also mentioned, well, before I go, I want to make sure this camera's on.
Sure.
I'm having an OCD thing in my head. Okay. You mentioned at the beginning, you're like, well, my job pays the bills, but that makes me interested in what you do. So
Okay.
what is your job? Or what do you do?
I work at a local refinery.
Okay.
I'm in compliance. I was in operations for several years. And then my wife and I got married, and her brothers applied for the job there, and they told her that she should apply for the job just for fun.
Yeah.
See if she could get through. And sure enough, she got the job. They didn't. In the end, one of her brothers is now working at the same refinery.
Okay.
He made it in, but it was an interesting experience because it was after we got married, but before my wife changed her name to her married name, which is my last name, obviously. And nobody knew until she got to the final interview who she was.
Okay.
So, and that was kind of important
Yeah.
for her to go through this, do this, and do it on your own merit. And she's been there ever since. Great worker.
So I know young boys don't dream of working in refineries. So when you were little, what was your goal? What was your dream, or what?
Man, I had so many.
I know my favorite one that I remember all the time is I would always tell myself I was going to be a race car driver and also an ambulance driver. So if I got injured, I could drive myself to the hospital.
and fast.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an architect at one point, and I think that stemmed just from the fact that I loved building Legos.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it became I wanted to be a meteorologist. Just fascinated by weather
Sure.
and nature and everything.
Yeah.
I never dreamed. My dad worked at the refinery for over 30 years.
Okay.
And it was never like, oh, I want to be like my dad. I want to work at the refinery. But he raised me in such a way that said, you could go do these jobs. You can go pay all this money at college, but this also pays the bills. And as it turns out, it pays more than the bills.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so glad that I had that opportunity and actually love working there.
Yeah.
So it was kind of neat.
My dad worked at GM for 31.3 years, and he gets mad if I don't put that 0.3. I was like, he's like, I worked hard for that. I said, I get it. So he worked there, and there was a time in my working life where I was leaving a job, and I went to school for landscape and turf grass management at Owens. I was a non-traditional student. I graduated when I was 24. I had to work full time through school just because, So there was a time where I was like, all right, I'm leaving this job. I'm either going to the University of Toledo and I got to take a $4 pay cut, but the benefits are really good, or my dad can get me into GM and I can work there. And I was talking to my wife, and she's like, why does it have to be those two? I said, this is what it is right now.
Sure.
I said, it doesn't have to be those two long term, but this is my options. And we chose for me to take a $4 pay cut and go to UT because the benefits were really good. And I was at UT for 7 years, and I've been with the Metro Parks for 4 years. But like decisions like that, like for me, it was like, well, this is what is going to benefit my family.
Exactly.
And I knew both those places very well because, like I said, my dad worked at GM and UT. I look at all this stuff like, man, this health insurance is awesome, and all this stuff, and that is a big decision sometimes, and now. My dad always says, whenever you guys would get a job, I would feel like that's your job for the rest of your life because that's how we grew up, right? And now people move a lot to better themselves, and I think that's important. That you always try to look to better themselves, and sometimes it's in the same position or same work. You're just moving up or moving to different things.
Sure. When I was a kid, my first job was a caddy at a country club.
Yeah.
And it was probably my least favorite job that I've ever had. I understand the value of working we'll call it a menial job, but just to have to get up, throw on a uniform, go to work.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was just about making money for, whatever, college, et cetera. But it's not until you get older that I think you realize the importance of those types of jobs and just the work ethic that you have to carry in order to, and then, as you mentioned, you had to make a decision on your career to better your family. And so when you're 16 caddying, the last thing you're thinking about is supporting kids or family, but it's building a foundation for your future and the hard work that it takes just to show up and do something you don't want to do. And in a lot of people's case, or in my case, eventually you wind up at a job that you do like and you like the people you work with, and also it provides great healthcare benefits and the rest of your life.
Yeah.
A retirement job.
What was the worst job you've had in your life?
Probably that job as a caddy. I never wanted to go. My dad had to kick my butt out of bed every Saturday morning, and if I didn't get picked to go out and be a caddy, it was the best day ever. 'Cause I didn't actually
because you just stand there and they're like, all right, let's go. Or
you're carrying
whatever.
somebody else. It's humbling. Trust me.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I never did that. I had friends that did it, but
yeah. And I had the luxury of not having to work a job to support myself when I was a kid, and as most kids. But a lot of kids started off in the restaurant industry or something like that. And I'm so glad that
fast food.
Yeah, I'm glad that I never had to experience that.
Yeah.
But
my first job. I mean, I've never really like hated a job. My first job, I worked at Boston Market in Maumee. It's not there anymore, but that's where I worked. And I had that job for like 4 years, and they would let me move hours or accommodate my high school schedule and that kind of stuff. But I remember I think I was lucky because Boston Market is fast food, but it's like not like McDonald's or Burger King, that kind of fast food.
Sure.
But I had an interview at Boston Market and Wendy's the same day because one of my best friends worked at Wendy's. And Boston Market's like, all right, yep, we can offer you $8.25. And this was in, early 2000s. I'm like, all right, that's pretty good. And I went to Wendy's like, all right, cool. Yep, we'd like to hire you. We can offer you $5.15. I'm like, see ya. No way.
And no tips.
Yeah. So I went to Boston Market and it was really good. And I had a great time. And at some point there was a bunch of Perrysburg kids. I went to Perrysburg, a bunch of Perrysburg kids that worked there. So it was fun. And, mentioning like working in fast food, like I had friends that worked at different fast food places or pizza places. I worked at Hungry Howie's when I was in Perrysburg. And, you're right, though. All those jobs, you look back and you're like, yeah, it probably wasn't the best, but at the time it was perfect for what was going on, and it taught me a lot of things, and as an adult, you reflect on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and growing up, I had many different jobs, fortunate enough to work in a lot of different industries. I ended up working at a pizza place in Rossford, and that was a unique experience. Probably one of the most fun jobs that I had because I was able to work with friends, and that just makes a difference. Yeah. Now I have an office job, but I do like the people I work with. But just all the jobs that you work throughout life, and I know some people have only worked 3 or 4 jobs their entire life. Mm-hmm. But for me, I worked a lot more, but it also exposed me to a lot of different kinds of jobs, and you kind of get an idea of what is going to be my career path in the end. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you went to college. I tried it 3 times, and I dropped out every time. It just was not for me. School was never for me.
Yep.
I couldn't sit still in a classroom, and I guess I didn't see the future out of that. Mm-hmm. But
I was the same way. I tried twice before I got kicked out of 2 schools just because I didn't go to class. And I coach high school football at Perrysburg, and I tell them that. I said, hey, I know your parents probably don't like to hear this all the time, but college is not for everybody. And I explained to them what I did. Like I went to BG, wasted money, got kicked out. Went to Owens, wasted money, got kicked out. Eventually took some time off, and then went back to Owens because with the encouragement of my wife, or at the time she was my fiance, and then I went to school. And I even tell them then I was a 2-year degree. It took me 4 years to get my 2-year degree because I had to work full time. Like here's all these things that you don't think about, like college. Sure, if you know exactly what you want to do and you have the college to go do it, beautiful, go do it.
100%.
Yeah, but if you don't know, even if you think you might go to college, you're like, yeah, I want to try it. Owens is awesome for that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like, I went there, got all my gen eds, and ended up getting my degree from there. But it is. I'm with you. Like school is not for me. I was at UT for 7 years. I could have went to school for free, and I didn't take any classes.
You're like Tommy boy.
Yeah, I didn't do anything.
It's been a culture shift too, in favor of that. Mm-hmm. College obviously has become so expensive.
Yeah,
and just to go to college, it doesn't make sense. I understand that the first year or two, you get your general classes out of the way, and good for anybody that does want to continue in college but doesn't know what they want to do. But there are so many opportunities out there now for kids that can't do college or school, and I think it's for the better these days anyway.
Yeah, I have like I said, I work for the Metro Parks, and my maintenance guy did not go to college. One of the best maintenance guys we have in the park district, just because he's always learned. He grew up working on engines and just working on stuff, and now he can fix a lot of things for us. And we had a mower that rolled over, and he was able to get it back and running. And by the end of the day, like he's very good. And people make fun of him, but I tell him, like, dude, I know like your friends would make fun of you, and they're friends. Like that's just what friends do. They're young. They're all in their mid-20s, and I was like, but realize like how like important it is that you could have went to college and maybe you still would end up in the same spot, but you didn't, and you had to do all this stuff on your own or with help from people and learning on the jobs and stuff. And he's very dependable. Very dependable.
And I feel like especially manual labor jobs are entirely underrated, especially for younger kids that maybe don't know what they want to do in college or life in general.
Yeah.
It teaches you a lot, humbles you.
Yeah. At your current position, do you have staff that you oversee or you manage?
Not really. I'm part of a business team.
Okay.
We have a few business teams that are responsible for the running of operations in the refinery. So it's a little bit different than when I was in operations because you're out there by yourself doing your own thing.
Yeah.
For what I do now, it's more about overseeing with a refinery and the way there's so much compliance nowadays with environment, and obviously refineries are not the safest place to work, but overseeing, how do I want to put this, any kind of event that happens, an unfavorable event, we'll sit down and talk about something that happened. What can we do to make sure this never happens again? It's process safety management. And so anything that has a due date attached to it, like we have to fix this issue because this happened, so on and so forth. So it's interesting to be a part of that, getting to work with all the departments in the refinery.
Yeah.
We go through processes where engineering, inspection, operations, so many different hands are on a project. It's to be able to learn things about the job, where in operations it was you go, you show up, you do your job in your plant.
Yeah.
But with my job, I get to interact with all the different departments, engineering, inspection. So I'm constantly learning. It's almost like being in school. So it's super unique. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Retirement job too. So,
Yeah. How was the shift from actually working in operations to what now you said it's a desk job? How was that for you?
Don't move around much.
I shifted to more of a desk within the past couple years, and my knee started to bother me, and I went to the doctor, and they're like, I was like, my knees bother me. It's kind of swollen sometimes. Like, well, have you done any like different, like moved more or done it? It's like, actually, I've moved less.
And it's interesting you bring up that point, because that's true. Working a desk job, you get up to go to the bathroom, and you're like, wow, how long have I been sitting? Because like my knees are creaking on the way to the bathroom and everything. In operations, you're out there in the field sometimes 2-3 hours at a time, moving around, and I noticed that too.
Yeah.
Working out is kind of like my release from that, or the ability to go move around that you don't get sitting at a desk job. But I certainly enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's a great job.
I know for me, it took a little bit to be like, all right, my job now is to stare at this computer for a little bit. I still go outside and do things, but this is my job. I got to manage people. I got to do schedules. I got to watch the budget, like all these things. And it took a little bit because I've been outside for, doing some sort of landscaping or groundskeeping prior to that for 12 years. And now this is it. And it took me a little bit to I guess, figure it out.
Yeah, and so I miss some days. I miss being in operations, not those 90-degree days and not those 0-degree days. I don't miss those at all. But just being able to get up and walk around outside and go do something, certainly not required of my job now, but can go in the field anytime I want. But noticeable difference, especially because the operations is swing shift. So you're working 2 nights, 2 days off, and then you flip-flop to day shift. With my job, I'm just 7 to 4 desk job now. So completely different, but at the time when I met my current wife, it was a good move for me to make, just to be, present on a regular schedule. And then she goes and gets a job at the refinery in operations, so completely flip-flopped. I had no idea that was ever going to happen.
Sure.
But for her, that's also a career job. It's afforded her the ability to raise her daughters. And it really helped that I had been in a swing shift job to understand where she's coming from.
That's a good point.
It's not favorable, but certainly being with somebody that understands the throes of it. She just worked last night. She's sleeping right now.
Yeah.
I feel like in the refinery or in swing shift in general, I think it's difficult for any family, because I remember my dad when he was in operations, his dad working tonight, his dad working tomorrow, or his dad going through a maintenance turnaround where we're only going to see him a few hours every night for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
whatever else.
And some of those questions might not be, is dad working tonight? In your kid brain, you're like, I hope dad's not working tonight.
Some days I wished he was.
Yeah, oh, for sure. That too. The other way, yeah.
Yeah. But, as kids, when mom had us all, it was, get in trouble, we're going to call your dad. And if we call your dad, you don't want to talk to dad while he's at work. So
the worst, your day would be ruined if that sentence was uttered at like 8 a.m. on a summer day. Then the rest of the day, you're just like, well, I guess I just got to wait till my dad gets home and get yelled at or whatever,
That's exactly what it was, right? You have in the back of your head that dad's going to come home and discipline when he gets there.
You can even have fun.
Yeah, no. I can ride my bike right now, but that might not last.
It might be in pieces.
Yep, absolutely.
When you were a kid, were you outside playing sports? What were you into?
100%.
Being outside.
Growing up in Rossford was super cool because we lived in a neighborhood where our neighbors across the street, our neighbors next door to us, 2 doors down, 4 doors down, everybody had kids that were my age. And so I think we were the last generation that was playing pickup baseball games on a Tuesday night in the neighborhood. And the parents would come out and play. It was the most cool experience because everybody's seen the movie Sandlot.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, You just run off and you go play baseball with the other kids, and streetlights come on, go home. So fortunate to be able to experience that because that in it of itself was more family than family actually is.
Yeah, I get it.
Because they're there every day. So that was neat.
Yeah, that's it. We grew up in Toledo, and we had that too. We would always just be out. I have a sister who's a year and a half older, so our friends would kind of mingle, and we would. A year and a half younger, and our friends would mingle, and we would go do stuff where I'd just ride to my friend's house, and we'd either be outside or play video games. It was having friends, like even now, like they're so important because they you have your group of friends that be like, hey, if I need something, like these are the people that are going to help me out.
Sure.
And as a kid, you don't think about that. You're just there playing, doing it. But it's very helpful for that same reason when you're a kid. It's so mentally helpful.
And it's interesting you bring that up because I'm a huge proponent of men having male friends as they get older. I know that when you get married and have kids, finding time for yourself is hard enough on its own, but to have other men in your life where it's kind of like when you're a kid, you had your neighbor friends and everything that you'd go and hang out with, and it was the best of times. And I think that gets lost when you have kids, have a family. And so several months ago, we created what's called Dudes Lunches. And we do this every other Saturday where a bunch of dudes just come together. We pick a spot to go meet up, have brunch or lunch. And, we just get together and laugh and talk about life. And it's a real cool thing. And I think that really stems from how much we enjoyed as kids being able to just leave the house, go out and play baseball or whatever it might be. But to be able to do that as adults, sit down. I remember driving to work when I was younger. During the week, I'd drive past a donut shop, and there would be 4 or 5 old guys sitting there reading the paper. Just maybe some days they were in conversation, other days they weren't, but they were just sitting there reading the newspaper, eating donuts. But just for those group of guys to get together and do that, I'm like, man, I want that someday. And it's so cool to be able to do that at the age I'm at, not having to wait till I'm 60, 65 years old to do that.
Yeah.
But to get these guys together and hear about their life and support them, it's a great feeling.
Have you learned things about guys in that group that you have been friends with before, but that this group like opened up and you're like, oh man, I've known you for 10 years and I didn't know that about you?
Yeah, there's new guys that join this every week. There's some guys that go every week or every other week. And you learn a lot about other people's lives and their experiences. And it's, again, humbling to hear about their stories. especially people that can relate to maybe something that's going on in your life at that time. Underrated.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Me and my high school buddies, every 2 years we go on vacation together, and we'll be gone for 4 days. And,
I think I remember listening to one of your podcasts about that.
yeah, it's so fun, and I think even the lead up to it, like when we're emailing about it, and whatever we're doing to the lead up to is fun too, because we're even in emails we're making fun of each other or whatever, and then we've been friends for so long.
Sure.
You can like hear their voices as you're reading these emails,
geeking out about it.
Yeah, man, and it's just it's such a cool thing. And we went in San Diego last month, and even then we're like, all right, well, here's what we're gonna do or here's what we think we should do next time. And I love planning things. So
Same.
The first year it happened, it was kind of all over the place, and then we did it. We had a great time, but the planning part was kind of all over the place. So I'm like, all right, here's what we're doing. And I created a map of the United States. I split it into thirds. I said, all right, we went to the central the first time. We went to the west last time. Now we're going to the east. It limits what people can bring in. We have a 3-person committee that picks the place.
That's awesome.
All these people. So like it turned into this bigger thing. But my brain had to do that because there was just so much going on.
I can completely relate to that.
Yeah. And as the organizer, I'm like, all right, we got to rein this in a little bit. People can still have as many choices as they want. The 3-person committee will put this out, and then here are the actual choices we're voting on, and go from there. But it was a mind meld. Mind just messing with me.
I think that for people like you and I who are just natural planners, you said it right. Like just the time leading up to the actual event can be just as fun as the event itself. Yeah. But what a great opportunity it is to be able to get a group of people together and go follow through with something. And more importantly, as I talked about at the beginning of the show, having a wife that supports that.
Yeah.
Man, that's a teammate for life right there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Is one of your dudes' lunches today? Or
it is.
Is it?
Right after this, actually.
Where are you guys going?
Fakash's.
Where is that at?
Downtown Toledo.
Okay. All right. Yeah, my Jake's in it, and then my father-in-law goes too. I see.
Dale.
In his pictures. Yeah, yeah.
Great dude.
He's a Vietnam vet, and at some point, I got to talk to him. I don't think he listens to the podcast, but I got to talk to him because a couple people I've interviewed that have passed away, and the conversations now when I re-listen to them. The conversations are what they are, but it's weird to know the person I'm talking to is no longer here, right? And then it gets me thinking like, okay, at some point, other people I interview are going to pass away, and then we have these things, and I've given them to their families, so they don't have to like keep finding them on the internet. It's like, here, I put it on the drive. Here, you can have it.
That's super cool.
So that got me thinking about like my mom was on the podcast. She was on for 2 hours and told her entire story. And that's important for me, for my kids, Same thing for Dale. It's like I've known Dale for a long time, over 20 years, or about 20 years. And besides knowing he's a Vietnam vet, that's all I know about that because he doesn't talk about it.
Mm-mm.
So at some point, I haven't told him, but I've talked to his daughter, my wife. I was like, I got to talk to your dad about this. And even if it's, hey, I'm going to record you. We're gonna listen to, or you're gonna tell me whatever you want to tell me, because I think it's important for your daughters and for your grandkids, probably more important for his grandkids, to hear about your life.
Sure.
And I think I can get him to do it if I say no one's gonna hear it until you're gone.
I've met Dale. He's gone to every one of the dudes' lunches. It's a treat having him there. Even there, he doesn't say much, but when he does say something, it either makes us all laugh or it's a good story or a life lesson.
Yeah.
He's got to have a wealth of knowledge behind that brain.
Yeah. My garage is full of his tools because I always borrow things because he lives right down the street from us.
Cool.
They do. So, which is good for my kids. But yeah, I know if I need, like, I don't know exactly how to fix this. I can call him, or my dad lives in town too, so I call him too. But it's nice having both of them around to be like, all right, I know if I can't figure it out, one of them will, and one of them will have a tool from 20 years ago maybe, or 30 years ago to help me do this thing.
And I'm not that old yet, but I imagine when I get to be that age, when somebody would ask me for help or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be. That's your kind of your goal in life at that age, I imagine.
Yeah.
Is to, when somebody asks you for help, you're just a wealth of information and can help them out. And,
Yeah.
you can see on his face just the pure joy that he experiences, even if he's not talking, just listening to all of us.
Yeah.
He's a treat, man. I hope you get him on the podcast. That would be great.
Yeah. I think the only way for him to come on here is with that caveat to say, no, you won't know when people listen to this, basically.
He won't care.
I think with that, I can get him to actually like really open up about things.
Yeah.
That, and maybe make sure he has some tequila in him. And,
That's funny you mentioned that. That's every time we do Dude's Lunch, at the very end, him and I do a tequila shot together. Because
Yeah.
I know he loves the tequila. But yeah, that would be a treat.
he when I first went and met him, he asked if I wanted a Milliken margarita. Milliken's his last name. I was like, sure, whatever, And he comes back with a shot and a half of tequila, and that's it. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I look at Andrea, and she's like,
You do it.
So he just sips it. He'll sip it.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I am 21, and I'm not going to do that. So I will just shoot this thing down and go from there.
Oh, that's funny.
My friends, when we would go out to the bars and when I lived in BG, they always wanted to buy me a shot of tequila. I go, guys, just because I'm Mexican doesn't mean I like this stuff. Like, it's fine. If you're going to buy it, fine. I'm also young, and I will happily get drunk for free. But
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the death of every party is when tequila comes involved.
it's just what they wanted to do. I said, all right, guys, whatever, man.
Yeah. Well, I recently learned that if you're gonna drink, tequila is the best alcohol you can drink.
Yeah?
It's made from agave ends, so it doesn't spike your blood sugar like all the
okay.
other alcohols do.
Okay.
Which is good. It's just a clean alcohol to drink. I like it.
I don't drink a lot. A lot of times if we have a party or we get a case of something, it will expire before my wife and I drink it all. So we get small things.
Community beer.
Yeah. We get small things, and now for me I like high noons.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So I drink those. I do not like the tequila high noons. They don't taste as good to me for whatever reason.
I'm indifferent. My wife loves White Claws. I have no problem drinking White Claws.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to be day drinking on a weekend or something like that. It's real easy to find a seltzer or a tea or something just to kind of sip on throughout the day.
I tried Happy Dad for the first time last night.
Very good.
Yeah, those. I still like high noons better, but those are good too. Yeah.
Yep. Two Turnt Tea has been my lately.
Two Turnt Tea.
Yeah.
I never heard of that.
Well, there's a guy on TikTok, Two Turnt Tony, and he became so popular that they came out with their own line of drinks.
Okay.
Noka is the maker, and they're 100-calorie teas, 2 grams of sugar, no bubbles in it, so it just goes down real smooth.
Yeah, I bet that's. I don't know. There's something about when I'm drinking that I like the carbonation. Like I've tried teas, I've tried mom water. Like, and you're right. Like I could down it, but there's something about me. If I'm going to be drinking, I want to have carbonation. I don't know.
I love carbonation.
Yeah.
I'm not a big sugar guy, but once in a while, a grape Faygo or an orange Faygo just sounds amazing. And it'll sit in my work fridge for 2 weeks, and I'll sip on it. But it's just to have that carbonation. So I get that.
I always rag on my maintenance guy at work. He likes to drink teas, and it's like the big plastic bottles. I'm like, man, do you know how much sugar is in that thing? And he's like, I don't know. And I looked at it, I was like, dude, there's 42 grams of sugar in this.
It's just as bad as a Coke.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep.
I was like, do you drink unsweetened tea? And he's like, yeah, I do sometimes. Like, man, that's a lot of sugar, man. He goes, what's it with you and sugar? I go, it's just terrible for you. I was like, not that I'm a pillar of health, but I just know sugar is not good for you, and there's a lot of it.
No, you get plenty of sugar and unprocessed foods and everything else. You don't need to be drinking it straight out of a bottle. Yeah, I get that.
I want to go back real quick. Sometimes I used to make notes, and I've said this before. I used to like write notes down as I was interviewing people, but there was a couple of people who said something about it, and it made them feel like uneasy. So I don't do it anymore.
Like they were in a counseling appointment.
Something, yeah. So I don't do it anymore. So sometimes things will come and go real fast in my brain. But when you went back, when you were talking about like when you're doing stuff or thinking about what you wanted to be, you know, you mentioned architect, you like Legos. Do you still do Legos now? Because I'll tell you what, I like Legos, and now, as the internet says, I have adult money, and it's fun to buy Legos that I want to do, and not the stuff for my children.
I would absolutely put together Legos any day of the week. I don't have any, and I haven't thought about that, honestly. I guess I'm at the point in my life where I could do that, especially when my wife is working night shifts. That's kind of like my recharge time.
Okay.
Because when she's not working, doesn't matter when. If her Tuesday and Wednesday is off, that's her weekend because she has to work the weekend.
Got it.
And so we go out and do things socially when she's off. But when she's working nights, that's kind of like my me time. And I just like to decompress from all the social activities and everything. But building Legos, I never considered that. That's a good idea.
I recently, this is I think last month, maybe a couple months ago, I over the winter I got into succulents, growing succulents.
Yep.
Because they're very easy to propagate and they're very hard to kill.
Extremely hard to kill.
So I got into it.
You got to throw them in the lake if you want to get rid of them.
Sounds like that's what you've done. So I got into that, and then Legos came out with a whole set of succulents.
Oh my God.
So I think my son and wife were out of town for a baseball tournament, and we had softball, so we didn't go. So me and my daughter built these succulents, and it's cool because each one you can build. Each one has a little thing, its own like pot, and so you can have them all separate, or you can also hook them together. So it was a real cool thing. See if I can.
I got to see this.
Yeah, it was fun because my kids like Legos, so my daughter had a good time, building it with me. And let's see, I think this is the one we built right here.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, like I said, they come with little things where you can hook them all together, or you can put it all together like that.
You got to water them.
So no, you don't. And I think if you throw them in the lake, they'll float. So, so it was a cool thing. It was, and I've never really thought about buying Legos, but it was. I saw it and I really like plants. And there's been other ones too, but it just so happened to coincide with me really getting into growing succulents, and that these came out, and I was like, I'll do this.
Well, you mentioned growing plants. It's actually one of my favorite things to do is landscaping.
Oh yeah, okay.
I learned so much when I bought my first house about landscaping, and I completely transitioned my entire yard into different flowers. And I was all about variety. I wanted to see how this grows, see how this grows, see how this grows. And then once you get into it, you're like, okay, what time of the year does this bloom? What time of the year does this bloom? And then you start planning your whole yard around, always having something that's blooming.
Bloom time. Yep.
Yep. Yes.
So what is your favorite plant that you have?
Man. That's a tough question. I always love gladiolas.
Okay, yep.
Those are fun because you can cut those off and put them in a vase, take them anywhere. And I remember having my grandma over to the house. She'd come over once or twice a year for whatever birthday party, and we'd literally spend 45 minutes just walking through the yard, looking at each one of the flowers, and so that was just a cool experience because there's not a lot of people now, or especially dudes, that are into the names of all the flowers and everything else. So she was just thrilled to see all of the flowers that were planted in different places in the yard and whatnot.
I enjoy landscaping too. I went to school for it, and it's just I like being outside. We have veggie gardens. I actually use my neighbor's yard for a vegetable garden. It's the front yard, but just between our houses. There's just nothing there. And like 5 or 6 years ago, hey, can I put a vegetable garden in here? I was like, I'll take care of it. You guys can come out and grab whatever you want, whenever you want. And we've been doing that ever since. I really like trees too, but my yard's not big enough to be planting a bunch of trees. So eventually, but I do like. I like order though. So like, I'm not I don't like hey, we're gonna just throw all these wildflower seeds and just let it go. My wife does though, so I create an area so we can do that for her, and that is slowly becoming my favorite part of the garden that we have in our backyard is that wildflower area.
Well, you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, and then there's like 4 things blooming at the same time right now, and they're all different colors, and it just looks really cool. And I'm like, all right, well, where else can we do this thing?
I know. Imagine grown men geeking out about flowers.
I love it, man. I love
too.
it. We have these hydrangeas in our backyard, and I hacked them down really good this year just because they were getting really big, and my wife was concerned we weren't going to get flowers. So I go, don't worry, they'll grow back. They might be leggy, but they'll come back. And sure as shit, they're back. There's a lot of flowers, so I'm waiting. They're still not quite all the way blooming yet, so eventually we'll cut them and bring some in the house.
I like the clematis too, particularly summer sweet.
Yeah.
So it blooms in right around end of August.
Okay.
And it's like a vine, so it can take over a whole fence line.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass in the spring to knock it all down, but yeah, to grow back and I think one of the fun things about doing flowers is especially the ones that come back every year, they're stronger. You can propagate them and move them somewhere else in the yard if you want. Yeah,
free plants. That's my favorite thing. There's actually this woman that I coached. I used to coach a junior high track in Perrysburg. I coached her at junior high track. She's been on a podcast a couple times. She transformed her parents' entire front yard from grass to there's no grass. It's all just plants.
Okay.
And her parents are moving, and she put a message out to her friends and stuff like, "Hey, if anybody wants, they can come. You can come get plants at my parents' house."
Yep.
So I haven't made it over there yet, but I got to get over there. She has this one. It's called a ghost hosta, I believe.
Okay.
So most hostas are green or they're variegated with white, yellows.
Yep.
So this ghost hosta is white. And if you know anything about plants need to go through photosynthesis, and this plant cannot. So it only comes up in the spring, and then it cannot create its own food, so eventually it dies back to the ground. But it comes up every year. There's none of these are really good pictures of it, but it is all white. So it's a cool plant, and she said I could have it. I have never seen it around or in any stores or anything. This might be
I love hostas because you can you plant them where other flowers can't grow. So it's neat to anywhere in your yard that doesn't see sun.
Shit, yeah, yep.
They still flower. I love hostas.
I love hosta for that. I love bleeding hearts.
Yes,
is my favorite plant. And those end up all over my yard because I had them in the front yard. I had them in this area, and then they went to seed, and I just let them seed. So then there's a bunch of little ones, and then for whatever reason it made it over to the other side of the sidewalk and planted in there. And so then I took a bunch of seeds and just threw them in my backyard in an area to see if I can get some more to grow.
Sure.
But that is one of my favorite.
Yeah, and I especially love those lily of the valley. Anything that comes out in February. Because it's like spring's here. This is good.
You know what's a good one for that if you don't have any is
you're about to type Helleborus.
Helleborus.
Yep, I love those.
Do you have any of those?
I did.
Those are really good too. I couldn't spell Helleborus, so I went with Lenten Rose.
Yep.
But those are good too because again, something that comes really early, it comes out really early,
sure,
and blooms really well too. So I'm a huge fan of those too.
Yep, I love the. I used to have some purple leaf Helleborus.
Yeah, those are cool. There's a Facebook page now where it's like I don't know if it's called Perrysburg Free Plants or Free Plant Tables or something, but people are putting tables outside of their yard and just like putting plants out there, and then people like, hey, I have these plants, someone wants to come take them, and then like you can leave stuff too. It's pretty cool.
I just experienced that for the first time this year where I live in Luna Pier. There is a yard and they do such a good job. They're out there in the spring planting stuff. And then primarily it's vegetables, but they put up a yard sign that says, hey, if you want to take these vegetables, it's obviously a surplus, leave a donation.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, like you said, kind of like a free garden.
Yeah, yeah. I want to do that, and I talked to my other neighbor about doing that between our yards, is having like growing a cut flower garden, and then just letting people come in and take flowers and
Sure.
stuff for the same thing. Like, hey, if you can leave a couple bucks, that way we can always make sure we have plants here, you know. But I thought about doing that too because, you know, there's a lot of people that walk around my neighborhood, and you know, they see. I'm sure as they're walking to see people's landscapes, like, oh, that's a nice plant, or I'd like that flower or whatever, and let's create this thing so people can just go through it. You know,
I'll tell you, when I got divorced the first time, that was one of the things that I was going to miss the most was all the time and effort that I put into the yard and all the flowers that I, was leaving. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I wish I could, dig up some of these flowers and take them with me. Do we get to split the flowers in this divorce?
I asked my realtor that when we sold our first house. I've never sold a house before. I was like, hey, Brian, am I allowed to take plants before we leave?
Yeah, it's a legit thing. If you're into flowers, man, you put the time and effort into it. You're like, I don't want to leave this flower.
Yeah.
Funny. That's the only thing I was missing.
Well, Austin, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It's something I've been working on because I think it's a terrible thing, a terrible habit I got into doing just in my life in general, where if there's people I don't know, and I will Facebook them, I will go on their Instagram just to find out more about them. I saw like your Trump picture and all this stuff, and in my like old Lorenzo, I'd be like, well, I'm just never going to talk to that guy. I'm not going to have anything in common. The past couple years, I made a big effort to say that shouldn't stop me from meeting new people or talking to people because I'm 100% liberal. I've been that way my entire life. And that's just in my brain. I'm like, this isn't good. This isn't good for me. This isn't good for, in this instance, you. And as soon as you started talking, I'm like, this is why I need to do this, because you started talking about holistic stuff and you started talking about grounding and all these things. And I'm like, see, I would just put people in a category and cast away. I didn't want anything to do with it. And it is not your fault. That is all on me. And this is the kind of stuff that solidifies that thing in me to say, like, I need to do this more and not just be like, bye, So I just want to say that because it is important for me for people to know that they should do that. They should be able to be open, whether it's political stuff, whether it's religion, whether it's whatever, to be open to talking to other people, because things like this can happen. And I think I could say to you, like, hey, it was a great conversation, thank you. And then next week I'm like, hey, do you have a free night? You want to go out to eat or whatever? Like, that's how much this conversation meant to me.
Sure.
So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Obviously, thank you for having me. Politics is not anything that I let divide my relationships with other people.
Yeah.
Obviously, I feel the way I feel because it suits me and in my lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I'm what I guess you would call it a social liberal.
Okay.
So in terms of that, people are important to me no matter what their beliefs are.
Yeah.
I support who I support, but I also support my friends who maybe don't think the same way that I do. And I'm not one to use that to judge a relationship that I have with another person.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think the value of friendships and people and the wealth of information that other people have 100% supersede any political beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And I agree with you. And, I wanted to, like, right away, I knew, like, all right, well, this is going to be good. Jake knows you, like, I'm not going to not be open to things, but again, it's something I'm working hard on because I've done it in the past. I told my boss, who we have different beliefs too, but my boss is a real good guy and we've become friends. And that's the same thing. Like, I was like, you know what? So you do things, Craig. And it's like, it's like, I didn't think that that's how you would think, or that's how you would do or react to this. I was like, but that's on me. Like, I got to be more open to this kind of stuff, regardless of who you support or what you think. Like, there's all different kinds of levels of people.
Sure. I think media exposes us. They want us to believe that because you believe a certain set of political agendas that you're automatically put in the corner, or you're going to have these beliefs. But really, when you get down to it, it's relationships.
Yeah.
That's so much more important to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. You are solidifying my need to do this by coming out here and opening up and talking all about what all the things we talked about, and I think it was perfect for us to end on talking about flowers. I think it was.
I love it, man. I'll take flowers any day.
Well, thanks, Austin.
Thank you.